Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your marriage without your man's conscious effort so that you feel desired, taken care of, and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm revealing 3 steps to prepare for relationship coaching. My guest, Claire's husband of 17 years, had 1 or 2 feet out the door, and there was another woman. And they were in major crisis. She loved her husband deeply, but he was set on leaving her. This motivated her to take a completely different approach, and they had a total breakthrough. Now she says their marriage is beyond both of their wildest dreams. It's what they have both always wanted together, and they are extremely grateful for what she calls a second marriage with the same person. She's going to tell us how she did it so you can do it too. Then the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award goes to an article on a popular website about how to tell if a marriage is headed for divorce. But it's not only hooey, it's downright harmful. All of that's coming up. But first, I'm going to reveal 3 steps you can take to prepare for relationship coaching. If you're considering getting relationship coaching to make your marriage last and thrive, you've probably already read articles and books about relationships, and maybe you've even been to couples counseling or individual counseling, and you know that drill. And you may be wondering how coaching is really any different. And why would you need to prepare for it anyway? Isn't that like cleaning before the cleaning people come? Well, I admit I do a little cleaning before the cleaning people come because I want them to clean under that pile of stuff on my desk and really get my money's worth. And you probably want to get the most that you can out of relationship coaching too, because it's an investment in making your marriage last and thrive, and you want the most from your investment. So here are 3 ways you can prepare for relationship coaching to get the most out of it. Number 1 is get out your magic wand. Get out your magic wand. If you had a magic wand and you could wave it, what would your marriage be like? What would it be like? One thing I promise your coach is going to ask you is what your vision is for your relationship. What would you consider a successful outcome from the coaching? And without a destination, your coach won't know where to take you. But if you want your husband to move back so you're living together again, or to start pursuing you in the bedroom, or to start coming home from work on time to be with you again, or kiss your neck while you're working in the kitchen, or to stop drinking so much, or to take you out on a date, then your coach will know how to guide the conversation to help you get there. So she's going to ask you for that vision. So what is it you desire? So important. Now, you might come up with your vision and you might feel even worse because it seems so far from your reality. And that can make you feel hopeless. Which is why it's great to have a coach who's in your corner reminding you that there's every reason to be hopeful now that you're getting the right information and support and the encouragement that you need. Plus, since what you focus on increases, knowing where you're headed and focusing on that outcome is a great way to create the outcome you want. Number 2, listen to other women getting coaching. You're like, well, how do you do that? Well, when you're struggling or you're hurting about something in your marriage, or maybe you're embarrassed about the way your husband is showing up with the kids or the way you're showing up with a lot of jealousy, it's an act of courage to tell somebody else, even if it's a coach who has been where you are and has nothing but understanding and empathy for your situation. But some kind of magic happens when you get to participate in group coaching, and you can watch and listen to someone else getting coached on her embarrassing, tender issue. It's a great reminder that no marriage is perfect, and you're not the only one feeling like your marriage is falling apart. We have a culture of sharing vulnerably on our campus. That's the norm around here, is that women are sharing things they've never told us so before. But they share those things here with us because it's just that safe. It's such a sacred space. And then by hanging out with all these brave women, you become brave yourself. And fortune favors the brave. And as you can tell from listening to the women who come on the show to tell their stories, they've gotten pretty brave. So, one way to ease into coaching is to first join Ridiculously Happy Wife, a group coaching program, before you get private coaching. Number 3, don't do anything. Of course, you don't really have to do anything to be ready for relationship coaching. It's not an easy thing to stay in a marriage when you're hurting every day, and you have been for a while. And it's even harder to decide to work on what you can change in the marriage when you see so many things he's doing wrong. So just showing up for coaching as you are, that's doing plenty. Your coach will guide the conversation, and she'll trust you to be the expert on your own life. It's not like a track coach or something. It's not like you're going to have to run a mile or do push-ups. Your relationship coach won't even tell you what to do. She will bring a big listening ear, and she's going to ask some powerful questions. And she's going to share her experience, and she's going to acknowledge you for your courage and for your accountability and for your commitment to your marriage. And if that describes you, well, you're all ready to get relationship coaching. If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. My guest Claire's husband of 17 years had 1 or 2 feet out the door, and there was another woman. And they were in major crisis. She loved her husband deeply, but he was set on leaving her. This motivated her to take a completely different approach, and they had a total breakthrough. Now she says their marriage is beyond both of their wildest dreams. It's what they have both always wanted together, and they're extremely grateful for what she calls a second marriage with the same person. She's going to tell us how she did it so you can do it too. Claire, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. I'm so grateful to have you here.
Thank you. It's an honor. During this whole process and during my journey, it was actually one of my dreams. A thing that I was going to manifest was being on the show. So, yay!
The dreams do come true, right? What a great goal! I love that. Actually, what a great thing. I mean, for anyone who's listening, like that could be your focus also, that you're going to be so successful. You're going to want to come and share with other women about it on the podcast. So I love that. So, all right, well, take us back to the bad old days. We want to hear what was going on.
Well, the bad old days, I would say it was kind of a slow decline for our marriage that happened over maybe like a 5-year period. This is from my perspective. Of course, my husband has a different story. And for me, the bad old days, even that slow decline, things weren't great. I still thought, this is what marriage is. This is, we have some problems, we're working through them, but we'll be fine. So for me, the bad old days actually started in one particular moment when my husband told me he didn't love me anymore and he wanted a divorce. Mm-hmm. So the bad old days, in my perspective, was the beginning of our 2.5-year crisis that we just came out of. If you asked him, I think it was a much longer period. So, but just to elaborate on that slow decline that we experienced, I think a lot of women could relate to this. Slowly, my husband was pulling away, spending more time in the man cave, just withdrawing from me more, not wanting to spend as much time with me. And back in those days, I didn't know any better. So I chased. I used a lot of masculine energy, right? I pursued him. I told him we needed to spend more time together, that we should go on more dates. I questioned him more. I tried to control him more. So things just got worse. Even though in my mind, I was trying to fix things at that moment. Like I knew there was problems, but I didn't have the skills then. So I try to give myself compassion. Of course, I have had moments where I'm like, why didn't I find the skills before a crisis? Because it was finding your book and joining your program that really opened my eyes to what I had done to cause the crisis. Actually, before I found you, I was in a midlife crisis support group because I really did believe that my husband was in a midlife crisis. He had all the signs and behaviors. When I joined, and that course did help me immensely, I have to say. There was a lot of good that I got from it. But when I found your course, it actually helped me realize like, oh, maybe it's not so much a midlife crisis. Maybe it's like, no, my husband just realized he was done.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I can really relate to that remorse of like, why didn't I know this? Why did no one tell me? Because there was a lot of suffering that happens because you just didn't know any better yet. But I
Yeah.
also really hear you being so open. You're so willing to look at how am I contributing to this. So and the distance part, I know for me that was just an incredibly painful thing to
Oh,
go
yeah.
through, right? Like,
Oh, man. It was just, he just didn't want to spend time with me anymore.
yeah, yeah, you feel so rejected.
Oh, my
Or
gosh.
discarded. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. 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 He would do anything but. And it just made, and then my resentment grew, right?
yeah,
So it was like it really was a vicious cycle for a while. Now that I'm out of it, I can see when I was in it, I thought we were in kind of a normal marriage at that point and that we had gone through some hard times. And there was some communication. I mean, he was expressing that he wanted to try to spend more time with me, but it was like my behavior, I realized was just pushing him away. And again, I didn't know that kind of that pursuing, that pleading, that was just repelling him. Right? Even if they want to spend time with you and you have that kind of behavior, it's
like a force field that they can't quite break through, right? They'd have to.
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, absolutely. And so he told you he didn't love you,
Yeah.
and then you
Yep.
were crushed, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. So that was such a crisis moment. I have to say that this did happen within weeks of his father's death. So there was a lot of marks of a crisis, but I think it also was just he seeing his father be at the end of his life, he just felt like, okay, my life's too short. I've got to make a move. The thing that really was it was so shocking. It was like a bomb drop. That's used a lot in like midlife crisis support groups, but it's that moment where they just tell you they're done because even though we'd had our problems and we, had had moments in the years before where we were really kind of like, how are we going to work this out? What are we going to do? With those kind of breakdown moments of knowing that we loved each other, but not knowing really how to fix the things that felt broken. He had never said he wanted a divorce, and he had never said he didn't love me. Regretfully, in the many years of our marriage, when I had lashed out at him years prior, I had
Yeah.
I had threatened our relationship. So that wasn't new for me, right? Like I mean, I was doing it less and less through the years, but in our early marriage, especially when I was just kind of at the end of my emotional bandwidth, I would throw our relationship under the bus. And I deeply regret that. But when he said he wanted a divorce, that was the first time he'd ever said it.
Oof. And for you, in your defense, it was kind of all you had, right? You didn't know how to get what you wanted in your marriage. So the only thing we had, I don't know, speak for myself too, was like, okay, I'll threaten and then that'll wake him up. And then
Right.
somehow things are going to get better. I don't know
Oh,
exactly what the logic is, but we were desperate, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was like you often say, it was a failed recipe. It was, I think, a pattern I had seen in my parents' relationship is things are good, things are good, things are good. And then you blow up and you let it all spew out and you say horrible things and then you're sorry. But what it turned out is those times had deeply hurt my husband. And I did not realize how much, I just didn't. I just thought, oh, well, I apologized.
He's
But
a big, strong man. So
yeah,
really, come on. Yeah.
yeah. Again, it wasn't until he left that I really took a long, hard look at those behaviors and how they did hurt him, because I thought when he would express to me how deeply he was hurt by some of my actions, first of all, they didn't happen that often. So I thought, well, it's not all the time. So I'm sorry. And it wasn't until I really just heard him and didn't try to defend myself anymore, right, about those times that I really could actually have that compassion. Like, no, I had really, really hurt this man who deeply, deeply loved me. And so when I would attack him like that, it would take him a long time to come back, and he would come back. But then if it would happen again, and so slowly over time, he just didn't have that in him anymore to come back.
You're so accountable. It's really beautiful,
Yeah.
Claire. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. So he did move out, it sounds like.
Well, that's the interesting part of our story. Not really. He never moved out. He just found other places to go. Worked out of town. He would he just would leave for weekends or like weeks and just have very little communication. So that moment he told me he was done, things changed very rapidly. Even though he had been slowly withdrawing before that, he was always around and reachable. From that moment on, it was like, nope, now he was done. Now he didn't have to answer my calls. He didn't have to tell me where he was. And so what I tell people too during this time is if I had kind of some underlying emotional neediness and fear about another woman, those things came to a huge head.
Yes.
During this time. So the behavior that had pushed him away initially, then when he was done, those behaviors got even bigger. For a time being, I kind of quickly got the memo that like, okay, what I'm doing is actually pushing him further, but I still deep down, even if I was trying to not have those outward behaviors, I still, inside that's how I was feeling. So I was projecting that no matter how I was trying to act. And so I questioned him even more.
Yeah.
I was even more suspicious and like, where have you been kind of thing. And it was a roller coaster, right? So they're in that 2.5 year period, that bomb drop happened September of 2019. So there were periods of time. So say in the fall, that was a pretty rough time where he was mostly gone. But then for the winter of 2019 into 20, he did come back and say, okay, I want to work on it. I do want to work on it, but I still didn't have the skills. So I would be on my kind of best behavior, quote unquote. I don't want to use that term really, because it's not about being on our best behavior. It's just about authentically being happy and content and empowered wives. But then some of my old behavior would come out again, especially my suspicious. So something that I haven't mentioned yet is one of the things that my husband really was done with when he was done with our marriage was the fact that I didn't always fully trust him. Mm-hmm. I have had betrayal in past relationships. And so I brought that to this one. And it didn't come out all the time, but once in a while, if maybe I was feeling really insecure and he was out with friends, I would question him. And again, it didn't happen so often that I thought it was a huge problem. I just thought, well, this is just part of me. I have trust issues from the past. And for a long time, I think he dealt with it. But more and more, he would just say things like, how can we be married and you not trust me? Like, shouldn't that be the foundation of our marriage is trust? And I agreed with him, but I still struggled with it. So that being said, that was, maybe one of our issues leading up to the crisis. And so again, when the crisis happened, my fear of another woman became just,
enormous terror, became terror of another woman.
oh yeah, if he was on the phone, I'd be like, oh my gosh, who you're talking, I mean, it became, yeah. So it's like my behaviors became even more extreme. And to be totally honest, I know we haven't gotten to the story of the other woman. I, some women might think I'm crazy and might not like to hear this, but I believe that I manifested that in a big
Wow.
way.
Wow.
Like
That is incredible. I mean, I love hearing that, Claire, because you are kind of building the foundation of that outcome right here. You're saying this is something I focused on for a lot of years. And then what do you know? Here it was. So I just admire that. That is what a painful thing to take responsibility for. Very painful, right? You almost want to be like, no, it can't be because that hurts
yeah,
too much.
yeah, yeah. But it is really, it, that is such an important piece of our whole story, really. So, and again, it's so good to share here vulnerably, because I do not share that with many people. If I tell that to most people I know, they would tell me, you shouldn't take responsibility for that. And I'm not saying I take responsibility for his
No,
behavior.
no, not at all. Not at
I'm
all.
saying that I had a role in that outcome.
Yeah. There was a lot of focus there. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really important distinction, right? You're never to he can always make different choices. Like
Yeah.
that's up to him. So you're not responsible that he found another woman. But what I hear you saying is like these are the things that I did that contributed to this situation
Yeah.
kind of exploding the way it did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's just so powerful because that is your empowerment in a way. Because if you contributed to creating it, then that means
Yeah.
you
I could create something else. And
can
that's
create
what
something else.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was I mean, there were many, many months where that is all I could focus on, because, right, my outer reality was telling me a very different story than the story that I had to choose to tell myself.
Yes. Yes.
So
There's all kinds of evidence. My husband's got another woman. I'm not his special person anymore. I'm not going to get him back. This is what all the evidence is saying.
yep.
Yeah. And that was painful. And that was kind of where you lived for several
For a
months.
while. Yeah, I would say so. Like I said, like starting September 19 was kind of this beginning of this real crisis roller coaster of, there was plenty of evidence, I think, that he still wanted to make it work, but for quite a while I was focused on the evidence that he didn't. So I had to, it was just a process we had to go through for me to finally get back to that place of like, no, I love who I am. I am worthy of this, love from another and my husband. And it's just a journey, right, for each of us. And I hate to focus on the timeline, because I know when I was someone like listening to this podcast, I wanted to hear
How
dates
long
and
did it take?
timelines.
How long? How long before you're out of this pain?
Yeah, yeah. And I know, I get it. I mean, I wanted to know when it was going to stop too. So I would say, like, like I said, there was this kind of up and down, but the April of 2021, I'm like, I can't even, it's hard to even be right on the timelines. Was when, like, kind of that was like the deepening of the crisis, where he kind of disappeared in a bigger way. After me questioning him some more. And that's, I think it was, I joined the midlife crisis support group last spring. And then I found your program. I started listening to your podcast, but I joined your free challenge. I believe it was August of 21. Was that when that was? Okay.
Yeah.
And then I joined the Ridiculously Happy Wife program in September. And I was in that for a few months, and I got some private coaching. And so I would say, like, April of 2021 until January of this year is like when I was really putting that, the real concentrated effort of, okay, I know what I need to do, and I'm going to do it. And of
Wow.
course, there's some hard days,
Of course.
It's not
This
like
is
it's just you reach it and then you're there.
no, but this is kind of a rocky moment, right? We're like getting strong now. Like you're like, okay, I can see my goal and I'm going to apply myself to that. So, and you
Yeah.
definitely did.
Yes. Yeah.
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 So what did that look like? How did you start?
Well, I started by taking the focus off him. I think that's one of the biggest first steps, especially, well, in any circumstance, even when they're living with you and things are just rocky. That's a very important skill, right? It's the skill of who do I have control over and what do I have control over? And it's me and how I respond to things, right? Because I think often in marriages, I don't know where we learn this or if it's just such a common practice. We have this tendency to focus so much on what the other person is or is not doing, and that is to me that's disempowering.
That's right.
That's putting all your power where it doesn't belong and where you have absolutely no control. So,
Can be
but
exhausting too,
it's
right? Like
very
it's so
exhausting.
tiring. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so counterproductive. And I know for any women listening, if your husband is literally like 1 foot out the door, maybe has another woman, you might know or not. I didn't know for a long time, actually. And that's the hardest thing to do, right? Is to not sit there and think, what are they doing? What are they not? Look at all the things they're not doing,
Yeah.
more importantly.
Yeah.
So that was a really important first step, is to just really get my focus back on myself. And I got good at it because when your focus goes on them, you feel awful,
Yeah.
especially in these dire circumstances. So that was like my indicator, right? Like,
Like touching a hot stove. Like, well, let's
yeah,
maybe not do that. Yeah.
exactly. It
Um,
felt so bad to focus on him because what he was doing hurt so bad. So that became really clear, focusing on myself. And then, learning your skills and reading your book, I felt I could have a lot of love and compassion for him. So I could actually have good feelings towards him despite his actions, right? That was another huge thing, was to, yeah, I didn't have my focus on him, but then if I did think of him, I could actually like feel love. And so that was another huge, I think, breakthrough, was just I literally kind of had these euphoric moments sprinkled throughout this journey where I just felt so much great gratitude and love for this like beautiful man. The hindsight of like seeing how much this man loved me and tried to make it work,
oh,
like you're the skill of receiving graciously, for instance, right? To look back and think, oh my gosh, like I rejected his love, you know, by not believing him. So loving myself and getting that woman back who knew how worthy she was of love was the really important first step. And that had to be totally independent of him, right? I had to like really get that mojo back. Like, nope, I've messed up. I know I didn't have a handkerchief handy all the time. Um, so that's something I started to do differently. And I was doing this when he wasn't around, right? This was like just me sending love, or if he'd call for some like kind of logistical purpose, so that I could just, hey, nice to hear from you. That's so great you called. I miss you. I love you.
oh,
Right. That kind of energy. I mean, so that was a big first step. And then,
yeah.
yeah,
So he would call like about a logistics thing or something, and you would just kind of take advantage of that to show him love.
yeah,
It sounds like
yeah.
you're like taking every opportunity. So, but I kind of want to hear like, what about the resentment? Like, I get that you were having a lot of self awareness and insights about how you'd hurt him, and that created this beautiful compassion you're sharing with us now. It's so moving. But what about I mean, he really hurt you too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what did you do with that?
I would, I'd put on music and I would dance and I would cry and I would journal a lot and I would take walks. And I would, I also had to stop feeding that story. I
Mm,
mean, I needed to let it come out when it needed to,
sure.
but I also had to set up some pretty firm boundaries that I would stop talking to him, talking about him to my mom, for instance. Because every time I talked to my mom, she'd want to say, "Where's John? What's he doing? What's going on with him?" And I finally had to say, "Mom, I can't talk to you about that right now. I'll let you know. I'll let you know." Just, and again, nothing against my mom. She's a wonderful woman. She cares about me deeply.
That's right. She's
Um,
like to protect you. Maybe people that love
oh,
us
of
want to
course.
protect us
Oh
from.
my gosh. I can't imagine being a friend of mine during this time. It was probably hard.
Yeah.
Um, but I had to be so firm in the story that I would tell myself in my head and the story that I would tell out to other people too. So, and not that I didn't have a few close friends and that's where the coaching came in so handy. That's where I would cry or the support group. That's where I would just lay it all out. But what was great about that group is that wasn't a group that was going to say, yeah, just leave him.
Yeah.
He's not worthy. Because that's honestly, a lot of the outside world, if I shared my story, that is what I would get. And to be honest, I didn't want to get that because I wasn't quite strong enough yet to hear that and not just be taken down by that. And like, oh my gosh. Because to be honest with this journey, it's not like every day I was just like, oh, yes, I'm doing the right thing. I mean, I think that's a bit of a myth, right? That like we're just all, I mean, I think in my heart of hearts, I knew, but in my mind, our minds, we can't, what do we believe, right? Our minds flip flop all the time. So,
Fear's going to come up. Of
yeah,
course it is. Yeah. As long
yeah,
as we're mere mortal women, we're
yeah,
going to feel some fear sometimes. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so that's a huge, I'm glad you're using the word fear because that was like, basically, it was like a daily or a moment to moment choice of like, what story am I going to choose fear or am I going to choose faith? And I mean, it's just constant. It's constant
It is. It is. Yeah. It's all day long, right? Like,
all
oh,
day
here it
long.
comes again.
Yep. Yep.
And so it's first, I would love to hear. So what was the news story? So we know the old story was he's distant. He's got another woman. He doesn't love me.
Yeah.
What was the news story that you were filling in and finding the evidence for? How did you say it to yourself?
So I would say it to myself and I would journal a lot. And it was a lot of I am statements. I am loved. I am cherished. I am adored. I am the only woman for John. I have a reconciled marriage. We have um, the marriage of our dreams. We have a healthy marriage. We, have intimacy and trust and respect and amazing communication. I am supported. Oh gosh, the list goes on and on. Like, I mean, I would journal this every day. And I even did recordings too, where I would record myself saying these things. Yeah.
Okay, this is fantastic because I noticed you were really focused on the experiences you wanted to have. You were feeling
Yes.
adored and loved and cherished and
Yeah.
supported. Uh, and and I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but are you experiencing all that
Oh,
now?
yes.
Oh
Oh,
my gosh!
100 and 200%.
So you made it so.
Yes.
And so, okay, so you'd write these I am statements, and then would you find evidence for these things, or what did you do?
Yeah, slowly. So starting in July, my husband was home consistently. Funny thing was, it was actually precipitated by a wildfire. So the universe works in mysterious ways. A wildfire very close to home that made national news
Oh,
was very close to our community. And so he was actually on a trip, like going somewhere else with this person.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was the relationship at the time. It was just a ride share that I was aware of, that I was told. And maybe it wasn't even at that point, actually. At that point, it could have just been still a ride share situation. And, but this fire broke out. And so he stopped, he canceled his trip and came home. And so it was almost like he was forced to be home, to be honest, I mean, that was evidence too, though, right? Because he could have just been
That's
like,
how I'm hearing it. Gosh,
yeah,
this
he could have been
man
like,
wants to protect you and
yeah,
wants to be your hero. And
yeah, yeah. So he came home, did a bunch on the property, and he was home since July of 2021. And so that was kind of around then. Shortly after, I learned about your skills, and I started slowly using them. And so I had little bits of evidence. I mean, it wasn't. I had to
there's a
hang in
lot.
there. No, I had to hang in there pretty strong for a
You had to be
while
a really
because
good detective.
yes, yeah. I mean, again, though, just the fact that he was home, I was like, "Whoa, this is
Yeah,
working!"
yeah,
Like I've
yeah,
got this, right? So
yeah.
it was all how I chose to look at it, right? I
Right.
mean, um, and I would get little things like I would get like, so expressing gratitude, right? So when he was home, even before July, when he was home, little bits, I would start to express gratitude, even, just for little things. But I love how you say that's such a double duty skill, because it really is. And so and it's when the husband is not very receptive to anything, just expressing gratitude is really powerful. So I did a lot of that. And then then he would start to thank me. So it's like, even just, I took one of our children, we have two teenagers, to a dentist appointment, and he thanked me for that. And that was like, I mean, just the fact that I remember, right? Like, it was like, wow, because I don't even know if he had thanked me for stuff like that in the past, right? I'd always done stuff like that.
Sure.
And then one day I got a note I got in the shower, and he left a note in my closet saying, I'm sorry I can be such a sometimes, excuse my language. So just little stuff like that, right?
I mean,
And
that's pretty big.
yeah.
That must have felt big. You must have felt like
Yeah.
$1,000,000 getting a note like
Oh,
that,
yeah.
right? 'Cause
Yeah. Yeah. So it was those little things kept me going. Um, he also like wrote me a text at one point during this journey that said, you know, I appreciate you supporting me, but please just don't support me leaving you. Support support us being together. So it's like he calls it the dark ages. I mean, he can look back now at it. It's funny how men can compartmentalize stuff. And I don't even know if I totally understand what that even means, because I don't think I can compartmentalize, but it's like he really looks at this time that we've gone through, as he calls it, the dark ages. He was in a really dark place. And so that's where that compassion came through to. He was in a lot of pain. And the word pain is something that he would say to me. It would come up in conversations through these last couple of years. Anytime we would kind of talk and he would start to open up to me, the word pain was just a constant. So I don't know. I kind of got off track there, but just realizing that he was, he was in a dark place. And yes, partially it was, a lot of it had to do with the way I had treated him through the years. But he also had his own stuff he was going through too, right?
Sure.
So, so I would get a text like that, like, please support us being together.
Oh,
And at one point, actually, after I'd found out about the other woman, and I had a really tough week that
yeah.
week,
Ah,
the week after that discovery, I kept looking at that text, because that it was like that week precipitated our breakthrough. Interestingly enough, it's so interesting how these things all play out. I'll never probably understand it all, but it was like that discovery made me dive so much deeper into my faith. It really tested my faith. I had suspicions that maybe that was happening, but I had no evidence. And I was not looking for evidence anymore because of the skills. I just was like, I don't want to look for evidence of that. But I think it needed to come out too, though. So,
Wow.
yeah.
How did you
go.
discover?
I looked. I shopped for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so, and you already had that text, and you used that text kind of just on rinse and repeat to remind you, like, okay, there's this big bad evidence, but there's also, I got this thing over on the other side of the scale.
Yeah.
That is going to help me keep my faith.
Yeah. It's so, I don't know if I use this phrase correctly, but it's what comes up to me all the time, because I came into our marriage with a deep fear of being betrayed. And for the first 16 years of our marriage, my husband was as loyal as they come. I realized in hindsight. It was my fear. It wasn't, fear is funny. It tries to mask itself as intuition. I think a lot of women struggle with that. Like, oh, it's my intuition telling me that my husband's up to no good. Sure, my husband, I did choose a very interesting man to kind of resolve this deep fear of betrayal, because my husband is incredibly gregarious.
Yeah.
He's very loving to people, is the thing. He's loving to men and women, or, men and women alike, but women are people.
Yes.
And so he just has a very open, generous heart. And that triggered me a little bit through the years. And sure. He likes to go have a good time with friends. And I don't always like to, and then I would stay home and he would go out. But anyway, it's just so interesting how it all played out, because that was such a deep fear of mine. And then
Here's your worst nightmare.
It was my worst nightmare. And then it happened. And now our marriage is like stronger than ever, and I trust him more than ever.
So I think I hear you saying that this discovery, like having your worst nightmare, actually galvanized your commitment to the point where you were able to gather the strength to create what you have now. Do I have that right?
Yeah. If you would have told me years ago that would have been how it all played out, right? I would be like, no way.
No.
I did not sign up for that.
Right. I'm not going to do it.
I don't want it.
No.
But the phrase, it's like the stone that the builder refuses, will always be the head cornerstone, is kind of the phrase that keeps coming up for me. I don't know if that's the right use for it, but it just kind of serves me.
Say this phrase again.
It's like a biblical. It's the stone that the stone that the builder refuses will always be the head cornerstone, and it's the biblical phrase. And then it's in one of the songs that I've listened to over the years, and it's just like the thing that we sometimes fear and reject and push away sometimes becomes such a catalyst for our growth and evolution. And again, it's really bewildering, the whole process, but
it is. But I think I hear some gratitude for your journey. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Our marriage is like, it's the most beautiful thing in the world. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And that's what it's like, knowing that this was possible for my husband and I deep down is what kept me going, because I know who he is. And I know our love was so deep and hard to even explain, and just each part of our evolution, right? To like have this healthy, happy marriage, right? I mean, yes. Do I wish that I had the skills like before I even got married? Yes. Like I wish I knew these things then, because they make so much sense now to me. But would I trade our journey? Like, well, no, because I can't go back in time.
Can't do it anyway. Yeah.
I can't do it anyway. So it doesn't really do any good to sit there and wish things were different. but we're both so bewildered, but we're both so grateful. I mean, my husband thanks me every day for
Oh,
getting us where we are. Like he really gives me the credit
I do
for where
too.
we're at.
I do
Yeah.
too. I give you so
Yeah.
much credit for creating a beautiful marriage out of a complete and utter breakdown, out of your worst
Yeah.
nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is possible to do this because you've done it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then we'll talk about an acknowledgement. He's really noticed that he has a different Claire than he used to
Yes.
have.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And so,
Yeah.
he comments on it. So you must feel so proud.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So
It's amazing.
accomplished, right? This is
Yeah.
big.
Yeah.
This is where I
Yeah.
need to give out a wife award right here. Like, here you
Yeah.
go. Here's your wife award.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so tell us more about what your relationship is like now.
I get woken up every day with spooning and I love you
Love that.
and how beautiful and amazing I am and
Oh,
what he can do to support me that day. And it's just dreamy. It's everything we've both always wanted and more. The affection, the physical affection is so, I realize, so important to me. It feels really, really good. And I'm getting it over the moon. And the words, the words of appreciation and affection. And like I said, the gratitude and just the healthy communication. Just that safety and sanctuary are really, really key words for us both. We both feel safe.
wow.
We both feel secure. Um, and I think that was something that was really missing for a really long time. As I learned through your skills, some of my behaviors and habits were, just took away the security and emotional, the emotional security. I think I just, because I was raised seeing it as normalcy,
Yeah.
it's like attacking someone when we're upset, verbally. Even though it might seem normal, it's actually like really, really an unhealthy
Yeah. Yeah.
um, way to be. And I didn't see that for a long time. I just thought, well, no, that's just me. It's like when I'm upset, I just, say really mean things and
Right. Yeah.
um,
Who doesn't? Right. I
and
mean,
like throw our marriage under the bus. And isn't that like that's okay, right? Like,
yeah. Yeah.
again, not that I don't have compassion for myself. I'm not saying that to berate myself and like
No.
say that I'm a terrible person. But I just know now that it's not worth, even when, because all right, I'm still a mere mortal woman. I still have my
Mhm.
moments where I want to just like, if I'm tired and overworked and upset, right? It's like anger. I know you talk about this, like anger is sadness projected outward. So it's way easier to like blame my husband for me feeling awful. And that's what I used to do because it was easier than just being vulnerable. And we had such a beautiful moment this week where my premenstrual phase is kind of like the danger zone for our relationship
Sure.
and
Sure. I used to get
throughout
it too.
history.
Yeah.
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 And this week I was feeling premenstrual and it's like there's been just such an internal shift for me because I feel that familiar urge to tell my husband everything he's not doing right
Yeah.
during,
That's right.
right? Like,
This is when
and
the truth comes out, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but because of the crisis I've gone through, like I'm not going down that road again. I'm not going to attack him anymore. I know how sensitive he is now. I know how much that hurts him. And yeah, when I put the shoe, when the shoe's on the other foot, that would really be terrible to have someone kind of, again, I use the word attack.
Yeah.
I didn't physically attack him, but with my words. And
Didn't feel good to you either, I bet.
no,
But
it
yeah.
never felt good. I always felt such, regret and remorse. And So anyway, now, because I know that I don't want to go there, it's not worth the loss of intimacy. It's not worth being, having him pull away and not tell me he loves me every day and hug me and kiss me and cuddle me and ask me what he can do to support me. It's just not worth it anymore. I know better. I stop myself. So, but instead, because I still am feeling emotion at that moment, instead I'm able to tell him, I'm just feeling really weak right now. I'm feeling like most of the month I'm so strong. I'm so able to carry responsibility with a smile on my face. And right now I just don't feel strong. I feel like I just don't have it in me to do all the normal things I do. And so what do I get? I get hugs, and I get more I love yous, and more like I'm here for you. Like, oh my God, what a concept. And that's why your program is so powerful, Laura. Like, I don't know if you realize like how many people's lives you change. I'm sure you do, because you do this podcast all the time. And by the way, your podcast got me through my dark time too. I listen to your podcast every day.
Wow.
So I dearly hope that someone, listening to this can find some story, right? Because none of our stories are the same.
No, of
And
course.
so I think, and when we're in those desperate moments, we're trying to listen to your podcast to find some like story that's similar enough that gives us the evidence that it's all going to be okay.
Yes.
And so we find little snippets of that, but no one's going to have the same story. And but maybe someone will resonate with some part of my story.
Absolutely.
I mean, I have a very soft-hearted husband. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And so, now I can be vulnerable. So it's funny how all the skills come in at different times too, right? Like there are certain skills I didn't use that much during certain parts of the journey because my husband wasn't that close to me at that time. He was in my vicinity, but not in a way where I could, I'm still learning the skills is what I'm trying to say. Is like, even just this week, I really got the whole like vulnerability thing. Like, wow, I can just be vulnerable with him and cry with him. It's like, as long as I'm not telling him he's the reason for my pain, he can really be there for me.
Yeah, I love that. That's so beautiful, because you started out saying he was distant, right? He was.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't sound like that's an issue anymore.
No, he's here in the house. My husband's never been in the house as much as he is now. Because early in our marriage, he worked out of town part of the time, and he was around a lot then in the early years of our marriage. But the 5 years prior to this crisis, so we're talking starting 7 years ago, it was actually also when we bought our first house and remodeled it and like renovated it us ourselves.
Oh,
That,
wow.
So that was like that was like the beginning, I think, of, that was just, there was a lot of stress and strain that then just kind of, snowballed the distance. And he's here all the time because he feels safe in the home. He doesn't feel like I'm going to tell him that he shouldn't be laying on the couch and resting, or trying to control him. It's just
the midlife crisis part.
Yeah, it ended. No, it ended. I mean, I think we went through a crisis. It was both of our crisis.
Right.
And I mean, he did go through something really big.
Yes.
And I'm sure that's going to continue to, come out. The beautiful thing about this is I don't have to pull anything out of him. The more I stay on my, just focus on myself and not try to get involved in his inner workings, the more he sees his role in things too. That's another beautiful thing. Again, I'm taking radical accountability for my part in our marriage breakdown. That doesn't mean he doesn't have a role to play, but he's more accountable the less I try to convince him of any, where he should be accountable.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right. So how it works.
Yeah. So I'm really getting a lot of those, like the trickle in of him kind of, just being accountable and kind of having his own epiphanies of his role and things too. So,
well, this is just it's such an outrageous success, Claire, because I think, so many marriages, this would be the end of it, right? There's so
oh
many where it was like, well, he cheated, and I'm justified and
yeah,
too bad for our kids, but it's his fault. And you've taken like a totally different approach. And now you have this beautiful marriage. How has this affected your kids?
oh, they're just such amazing people anyway, and I'm just so thrilled for them that they've gotten to see this process.
The
And I don't
recipe you're
even think
handing
I'll,
down is
yeah,
different than the one you
yeah,
got. Yeah,
yeah.
better.
And I don't even know if I'll see it. Again, it's probably going to show itself for years to come for the rest of their lives. But oh my gosh, like it just brings me so much joy to see the closeness between my husband and them. He makes them breakfast every morning before they go to school. And
That would have been gone. That wouldn't be happening.
yeah, it could have gone so different.
Could have. Could have. Yeah. And you were the magic thing, that brought the love and the commitment and the courage
Oh my gosh.
and the
It's a
accountability.
miracle. It's a
It's a
miracle.
miracle. It is a miracle. Your family is
And
a
it's like
miracle.
the most beautiful of miracles.
Wow. And you did it. You're a miracle worker.
Well, you are, Laura. I mean, what you are teaching is counter to the main cultural narrative of it's your fault. There's just it's just such a different way of looking at things, and not everybody's ready for that. I feel grateful that I was ready for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the difference is. I have another acquaintance right now who's going through a divorce, and I don't judge anyone else's
No, we
journey.
don't know
It's not that my way's the right way. I'm just so grateful for
the path
my
you've done.
family.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
It's really beautiful. And our kids, I think it's going to make all the difference in their life.
They got a home court advantage that not everybody
Yeah.
gets. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really am even when he was really MIA and I was obviously in a pretty bad place. I mean, I was still functioning, I have a business, I was running. Not that I was like preparing amazing, healthy home cooked meals every night, but we had
No.
food.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Even if it was frozen pizza.
Right.
I really began to just speak really kindly about their father to them. I just really I started to say, look, I don't know what's going on, but I love your father and we're going through a dark period and he's an amazing man. And just try, because again, I do not want to defend what he did. I don't think that was necessarily the best
No.
path he took.
No. No.
I mean, it was not,
No.
there could have been other ways.
That's right. That's right.
To handle the situation, but
It's not really defensible, especially by you, right?
it's not defensible. But he has his part, I thought that's on his paper. And love is just a really powerful thing. I'm not a religious person. I grew up going to church, but we stopped going to church because of some things that happened within the church. But it's almost like this has made me get the teachings that all these churches are really going for. It's like that whole, and I'm not going to be able to recite it right, but like the love is patient, love is kind,
I was gentle. You're gentle.
yeah, I get it. It's like you can say those things all you want, but then you experience them and they're really profound. And I think that's why your skills are so profound. Like, I feel like your skills are teaching really like deep spiritual truths, but in this package that's very relatable.
Yeah.
like they're really profound. It's a really profound way of living. It's nothing short of revolutionary to show up in a marriage in this way.
And then the results are this beautiful family. It really is all it's cracked up to be in love every day, isn't it?
It is.
It's really worthwhile.
It is. It is. And why, we're both bewildered by the path it took to get here. We really both are. I mean, neither one of us takes it lightly what just happened.
Yeah.
It was, not easy.
So for a woman who's listening who is where you were, wanting to know like how long, and he's distant, there's another woman, he seems 2 feet out of the marriage. Where should she start to create what you have, where he's waking you up with cuddles and kisses, and how can I support you, and gratitude, and making the kids breakfast, and their relationship is so good, it just melts your heart. Where should she start? What should she do?
She should start focusing on what she wants. She should start telling the story in her mind of what she wants her life in marriage to look like.
Yeah. Love that. Just fill that out. Let's get clear on that vision. What's your magic wand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then find gratitude any chance you get.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And what do you think you'd say to yourself if you could time travel and tell yourself what you know now? What do you think you'd say to you?
Oh my goodness, so many things. To really step back and let the man be, and really focus on my self-care, who I am, the receptivity of femininity, of really knowing our worth and our beauty, and that men want to love us and want to be our hero. And they will, if we can allow it. Like you so often say in your podcast, it's, I think we've all learned to get along in this world with a certain amount of like masculinity and that kind of energy where you go for what you want, you get it, you try hard, you almost like it's like a forcing, pushing energy. And it works to a certain degree for a lot of things. But then I think a lot of us women, especially who are successful, maybe in our businesses or in other aspects of our lives, that doesn't work. That kind of energy does not bode so well when it comes to a marriage. And so to really remember how to embody femininity, which I think the world needs more than ever right now.
Yeah, I do too.
Like feminism isn't like just being more masculine. Like it's almost like feminism became like women just being more masculine, which that seemed, I think that was, yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, beautiful. You were an incredible beacon of hope and an example of what's possible with commitment and courage. And thank you so much for sharing your miracle and all the details of it with us. This has been very inspiring.
Oh, I hope so. I hope someone listening really can find some hope and some faith in listening to this, because it's reconciling a marriage is a really amazing thing.
It is. It's a big undertaking, and it can be done.
Yes.
And you're proof and evidence and hope for everybody. So thank you so much, Claire.
You're welcome, Laura.
If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. And now it's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
And the advice that has me cringing this week was sent to me by a student who writes, "This awful advice popped up on my Google feed, and she sent me an article from a popular website with this title. I'm a couples therapist, and this habit tells me a couple may be headed for divorce." And OMG, it is absolutely terrible advice. So thank you for sending this to me. This is so thoughtful of you to send me something so inane and silly to smack around like a piñata. So this is my shout out to you. Now, the couples therapist says that she asks the couple to tell her how they met. And then if they, quote, talk negatively about how they met, this tends to indicate that there are some major problems within the relationship. So I guess the part where they were at couples counseling wasn't a tip-off that there are some major problems within the relationship. Maybe she needs to make absolutely sure that they weren't there for the couples yoga class in the next room or something. So she asked them about the past so she can then decide if they're going to divorce. What the what? Okay, see why I get so shrill and worked up about marriage counseling? And actually, I'm being super restrained right now. So she doesn't ask them what their vision for their marriage is. But I'm pretty sure most people go to marriage counseling or read articles like hers, hoping to save their marriage and fix it. Not to hear that they're probably doomed. They were already afraid of that before they got there. And that is a big part of the problem, is that their doubt is bigger than their faith. And doubt is what makes marriages crumble. It really is the devil. So here's this therapist going out of her way to find doubt in this couple that came to her for help. They're so vulnerable at that moment. And she's looking for evidence that, yep, they're going to fail. She could just as easily find evidence that they're going to succeed. After all, they came together to counseling, seeking support for their marriage challenges. For those reasons, the advice that talking negatively about how they met tends to indicate that there are some major problems within the relationship is the very, very worst relationship advice I've heard all week. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, I'll share how to be optimistic about your marriage. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that I'm not proud of who I become when someone puts out a bowl of fresh cherries for everyone to enjoy.